Welcome to QC Brief. I'm here with Michael Forian. This is the segment of the Backstage podcast that he proposed, he created, where we talk to you about the campaign that is ongoing here in Quebec, and that will end on the 3rd of October. This happens twice a week, Monday and Thursday. We give you a little briefing of what's going on in the campaign, where we're at the moment. So here we are. Mike, how's it going, buddy?
Happy Labor Day Monday.
Happy Labor Day to everyone listening today in Canada.
And around the world.
And around the world, yeah.
All ships at sea, boots on the ground, wherever you're listening to and wherever we're broadcasting from.
Everyone is relaxing today, except
us. And the party leaders, apparently. Exactly. I've got two party leaders in Hull today, where I am, in Gatineau.
Oh, cool. There you go.
Yeah. I've got Legault will be coming into Hull later this afternoon. Gabriel Dubois of Quebec Solidaire will be coming in this morning as well. They're going to be doing some campaign stops in and around the Outaouais region.
Nice. Very nice.
I feel important and relevant in this.
There you go.
And engaged.
We're going to talk today mostly about the debate that happened yesterday, the first one in this campaign. Not really a debate. I mean, we're calling it a debate, but it's not really a debate. It's I don't know, how would you call it? It's just a presentation. It's each leader of the party, kind of one-on-one with the media. There's three reporters. There's Patrice Roy, Céline Galipeau, and Anne-Marie Dussault from Radio Canada. And they take turns each with one leader, and they just direct their questions at them. I don't really mind the format. They did it for the first time, I think, last year during the federal election, or the year before, 2019. I can't remember, but it's very recent. I don't mind it. Of course, I don't like the fact that the other party leaders can't really interject or comment on, and have an actual debate. But it's an opportunity just to have this direct access to each leader and just bombard them with their questions, because you don't normally get that during the campaign, right? I mean, there's a bus of journalists following them. They have different things that they want to touch upon, and you don't really get this one-on-one with the leaders of the party. So I don't really mind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's this interview style that Radio Can really wanted to push on. It's a type of format which, like you said, they take each leader one by one, they drill them, and it was a popular debate style that they did in the last federal election, and they even said on air, like, viewers liked it so much, we're bringing it back this time around for the Quebec election. So it worked out well. And like they said, they try to temper expectations when people were watching at the very beginning by saying this is not the real debate, and we want people to know that that's going to be September 22nd, and you now have an opportunity to be introduced to each of the party leaders and to get that perspective there from them. So I thought I think it's good. I think it's good for those that are starting off at the beginning. Legault and Anglade were lucky just by the draw of the hats, by the luck of the draw in itself, that they were able to go first, because I feel that starting at the 8 p.m. hour, very quickly people are going to be turning it off. After 20, 30 minutes, it's only weird people like us that watch the full 2 hours. So most people have lives and bedtimes. So in any case,
So let's talk a little bit about that. We'll take each one individually. So the good thing about this format is that we could do this, right? Because they each came in individually. So we're just going to comment a little bit about how they performed, and the questions that were asked and all that stuff. But I do agree with you. People tune off really quickly, so it sucks for the people that came at the end. So for the PQ leader and Éric Duhem, I don't know if many stayed up to watch it. But let's start from the beginning. So Legault came in first. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think he was, heavily prepositioning himself. We made promises in 2018. We've kept our engagements going forward, and we're running on our mandate, which is a risky thing to do when you run on when you're a political leader, when you're running on your mandate, because sometimes voters are looking for new ideas. They're looking for proposals. They're looking to see what else you can bring to the table, rather than just running on what you were able to run on last time. Big topics for him were Bill 21, the Troisième Lien in Quebec City and Lévis, and he's using this, the way that he the host pre-positioned this as they were going into the interview itself was, whether this was a referendum on Legault's performance during COVID-19, but also as a referendum on Bill 96 and Bill 21. They wanted to, mix the French language debates, the decline of French, whether there's a decline of French, which obviously Mr. Legault and the CAC do agree that there is in Quebec, but also bringing in things that are, I would say, more at the front of mind for a lot of Quebecers, like inflation. And he wanted to be l'homme de la situation, the man in charge, saying, hey, listen, we're sending you checks. We're making things easier for you as times are tough. Even though a lot of his detractors would argue that him sending out, $400, $500, $600 checks are adding to inflation rather than relieving it. Legault is a man that's very results oriented, and he wanted to be the man in charge. The first question that the host asked every single one of the leaders was the question of security. Issues and threats against elected officials and candidates. In particular, what happened to Marie Risky, the MNA for Saint Laurent. We spoke about her in the last pod about, the attacks that she had been getting. And I'm, if you want to understand that, you're more than welcome to listen to the last pod. But by and large, I think that he did poor, especially opening up and talking about a female elected leader who is a victim of these attacks. And, by and large, whether you agree with Marwa on her positions or not, you feel sympathy. If you're a normal human being, you feel sympathy. And when he was asked about what he thought, he said, well, these things happened to me too, as premier. And it reminded me how Pierre Poilievre responded to when he was asked about threats against Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah.
She was in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and she was called terrible, terrible things by this big burly guy in Grand Prairie. He said, well, it's terrible, but you should see some of the stuff too that I have to go through on the campaign trail too. And it's like, guys, it's not about you.
Yeah.
Make it less about you just for 30 seconds and say, wow, this was tragic. This is the response it should have been. I really feel I sympathize with what happened to Miss Risky. I feel terrible about what happened. My thoughts are with her and with her family and friends and with her staff that have had to deal with the consequences of this man's actions. I'm happy that police are investigating. They've responded. They've arrested the suspect, and I hope that the investigation continues. And I hope this man is brought to justice.
Yeah.
That is the proper response that you give to something like this. Making it about you is what pisses everybody watching at home, whether they already support you, whether they don't, and then bringing in, well, with social media, this is what's happening these days, and so it's par for the course for elected officials. Bullshit response doesn't make you empathetic, doesn't make you sympathetic. And then the host really went back at him and said, well, you know what? Could this also be a mix between it was COVID measures, what you brought in over the course of the pandemic? He threw back saying, I'm making a call to all Quebecers to be peaceful in their political expressions.
Yeah.
I don't think that I think for his opening line, it was a pretty poor response from Legault.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I like the fact that they asked that first question, same question to all candidates. It was a way for them to, on their behalf, as Radio Canada, to reiterate the fact that this is ridiculous and it has to stop. The good thing is that every single leader came out and denounced it. They all made their little videos, and it's good. And then I like that. I like that about them. They just kind of had to remind everyone, and they gave the leaders each another opportunity to address the issue and to denounce what's going on. And I do agree with you. Legault should have been a little bit more careful with his answer. But I don't think anyone is going to remember. I mean, it was such a short question that people, I don't think, are going to stick to that.
No, they won't. They're gonna hone in on what he did promise, and that was $8 billion in tax cuts in 4 years. He tried, when he proposed that, and it's obviously something he's spoken about in the campaign trail as well. But he was pushing back from the host. They were saying well, don't we have to fix our health and social services first and foremost? But Legault went back and said, but inflation's killing us, and one of the best ways, apart from sending checks, even though it's not a good way to fight against inflation, is for me to make tax cuts across the board. We have to help people now. Our tax rates are too high. we need to give a little bit of wiggle room to taxpayers, and we can do it while maintaining or increasing our spending on state programs. So I feel that people wanted more of the meat and potatoes like that. Yeah.
Another weak moment for him, I think. In general, look, in general, I didn't. I found that he was pretty solid. I mean, Legault is an experienced politician, and
He played it safe. He played it
yeah,
safe.
yeah, he played it safe, but he usually excels in debates. I remember him even back in 2012, he was very strong. Like he keeps his, we're used to seeing Legault open his mouth and kind of put his foot in it usually. But when it comes to debates, he always stands his ground. He's pretty solid all around. I felt now, like you mentioned, the third link, le troisième lane between Quebec and
Yeah.
Lévis, or whatever, the South Shore of Quebec. He had a hard time defending the project, and they asked him about the reports, and he blamed it on COVID. And we're going to present the numbers. We have them. We just need to update them. People were working from home. It was just dude, it doesn't stick. There's big businesses whose employees are working from home that are advancing. This isn't an excuse. Who cares if they're working from home or if they're at an office? If you need the numbers and the figures, you should be able to have them.
Lâchez-moi des GRS, and that's going to come back to haunt Legault and the CAQ over the course of the campaign trail. That's what Bernard Drinville said in his press conference with Legault last week when they were making a pretty large platform announcement, and Drinville got caught up in responding to, whether or not the Troisième Lien was a project that was, how could you be in favor of the Troisième Lien and also be in favor of the environment at the same time? They're contradictory, and I feel that it's going to come again and again.
I think it will, and I think that moment is probably going to be one moment that's going to stick out in his entire campaign. Bernard Drinville, I don't know if they're going to have him again for press conferences, but it feels as though he's still stuck in his radio host mode,
which is crazy because this is an experienced journalist. He's an experienced commentator.
He's an experienced politician.
He was the cabinet minister under Paul Marois. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing, or at least he should know what he's doing. And it's the arrogance. It's the arrogance that's coming out, and it is really hurting.
When he said that, I felt like I was listening to him on the radio still, where he tries to challenge whatever interviewee he has. He's like, "Lâchez-moi avec les GRS là," and I'm like, "Dude, you're not on the radio anymore."
and then even towards the end of Legault's interview, it was asked by the host, are you too arrogant? Yeah. And it was so direct, his last question, and it really ticked off Legault because he responded, "Franchement, really?"
Yeah.
And he said, I think it was a good line. He was like, "The pandemic." I think first off, he shouldn't have responded that way, but I think that he tried to fix it and said, "The pandemic has made me really humble." But I just think regarding his entire performance, he played it safe, but I think he had to play it safe. His campaign advisors are telling him to play it safe because they know that he can get a little bit off topic. He can go. He likes to be free. He likes to say it as it is, and sometimes a lot of times I gets him into trouble. He was being pushed on immigration. He was saying that Bill 96. When he was getting pushed back from that, he's saying immigration is the key to stopping the decrease of French. 50% goal for Francophone immigration, for 50% goal for Francophone immigrants under the PQ and PLQ. We want to hit 80% of newcomers coming into Quebec coming from French-speaking countries, being French-speaking themselves. And then how do you balance that with the demographic challenges of Canada right now in terms of labor shortage? The pénurie de la main d'œuvre. You have Canada wanting to bring in 400,000 plus immigrants every year. He only wants to bring in 50,000 as part of his platform. He caught himself in this bit of a weird debate on the number.
And the journalists caught him too there. They're like, are you not putting Quebec in a disadvantage by doing so? Yeah.
And especially, we're technically speaking, Quebec is supposed to be losing a member of parliament with the reconfiguration of the maps that they do of the electoral districts every 10 years.
Yeah.
And Quebec MPs will be fighting to maintain it. This is a third rail in a sense of Quebec politics is when it comes to the amount of seats, the amount of population. And he, he caught himself in this weird sort of conversation or this debate with himself where, you want to only have 50,000 newcomers coming to Quebec, but you also want to maintain the number of seats or increase the number of MP seats in Ottawa. Like, why are you strangleholding yourself? This doesn't make any sense. And I felt that some of his answers were sloppy on that front.
Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah. I'm glad it was good that she was able to come in right after Legault. I felt that gave her a strong position. I think she was generally well perceived by the hosts. She was able to get her talking points over the finish line. Her response, of course, to what was happening with Marisky again wasn't very impressed. She started off well by saying, everybody needs to calm down. We need to be more, this needs to be a more serene campaign. And of course, she was sending this message to people that are, watching the campaign, observing it, and having very violent reactions to it online and otherwise. But she said, like, the violence that you're seeing right now on the streets of Montreal and Laval also need to be a priority. When she started talking about Mara, just to give listeners understanding, like, Mara Risky was attempted a run against Dominique Anglade for the leadership of the party. And there's history between Marwa and Dominique, and maybe a little bit of bad blood too. I felt that when she started talking about Marwa receiving death threats, and the hosts were sort of saying, well, you know what, your candidate, she pointed the finger at Éric Duhaime and the Conservative Party of Quebec. You do as well, of course. And Anglade sort of threw Risky under the bus. She said, we aren't in a situation where you can say it's the fault of this person or that person. And I felt that, when your candidate, who is a high profile candidate, is well perceived by the media, knows how to work the room when journalists are in it, and you have that kind of response by not backing up your candidate who's going through a really difficult time. I felt that was pretty weak. I think people are going to see that too.
I agree with you, Michael. But at the same time, and that was a bit of a tricky question, just for everyone listening and watching, they asked her directly if she agreed with Mara Risky that it's Éric Duhaime behind these threats. I don't think or know that it's Éric Duhaime. Nobody knows. I don't think it's him. I don't think he told his team, let's do it. But
she could have knew he started,
because that's what Mara
I agree with
said,
you that
right?
It's not him directly.
She was very blunt about it, and she was very direct. She was like, yes, it's him because of his discourse. This is what he has created.
He created the ground. He created the ground, not the groundwork. Let's say he created the environment for something like this to come about and to percolate into existence. And I think there's a nuance there that Anglade should have gone for and said, listen to report on what he's saying, listen to what he's saying, debate what this man is saying, because he is giving a social license to people to go out there and actively participate in violent ways and violent means, and he has to stop. He cannot keep on doing this. He cannot keep on trying to cause this type of discourse within the campaign. And I think that it was a missed opportunity, and it didn't, it's funny. Anglade's going around asking her candidates to be loyal to her if she loses the October 3rd election. She's going around asking for a vow of loyalty. I think this sends a really strong message to other Liberal candidates by saying, how can I trust Anglade if she's not going to back a candidate who's going through one of the worst weeks in their life by the threats that they've been receiving, death threats, and this is not the kind of leadership that I want after October 3rd, especially if she's not able to retain seats, not able to gain seats, but loses seats. How can I back her if she's not willing to back one of our fellow colleagues?
Right. I still think that it was a very tricky thing, because one, the question was it couldn't have been more direct, right? Is Éric Duhaime to blame? And I think she tried to play it safe by not going there, but by not addressing it, it seems that Mara Risky may not have said the right thing. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. I don't know how I would answer that question either, because you don't want to throw your candidate under the bus, but at the same time, you cannot blame that directly on one leader who, by the way, 3 days in a row, he's been coming out to denounce it, and he's the only leader so far whose volunteers have been stabbed.
Well, because the onus is on him, George. I mean, he has to. He can't just sit there idly and say, well, this is the way the world works.
I know, but if you look at it from his perspective, He's like, look, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. My volunteer got stabbed. So, I mean, how's this violence coming from my end, kind of thing, right? Because everyone now is thinking, are people directing their crowds to do these things? They can't think that nobody's really in charge.
I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think anybody believes that Eric Duhaime is orchestrating any threats or attacks.
Because that's how the question was addressed. It's as if they asked Anglade if she thinks, like Mara Risky, that Eric Duhaime is responsible. It was a bit of a low blow question, to be honest with you. But I mean, the journalist, and I agree with you. She should have found a better way to answer that. I know that you have more on Anglade, but I also want to talk to you. I think that she got off really lucky yesterday during the debate, because yesterday in the morning she presented the budget, like the costing of her budget. And she got drilled at the end for a solid 10, 15 minutes about the foundry up in Rwanda, on whether or not she knew about these things, because she was minister under the government of Couillard, and it was that government that gave the permits to this company to run up the levels where they are now, and she threw her environment minister at that time under the bus, Isabelle Mélenchon. She's like, listen,
she was running for re-election in Verdun, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to be a real tough fight for her.
It's going to be tough for her too. And there too, I thought, oh my gosh, she's getting drilled. She's presenting the costing of her budget, and all they care about is whether or not she knew about the levels of arsenic and the renewals of the permits happening up in the foundry up in Rwanda. And all she's saying that my department was not aware. I wasn't personally involved, and it had to do with the environment part.
It's a hot potato for all three parties that have governed previously. The PQ is obviously too involved in this, and albeit that PSPP doesn't have to really take in direct questions, because again, he has no government experience. He was never a minister. He was never an M&A, but there is a history there too with the PQ, the PLQ, of course, as well. Their tenure as like the longstanding governing party, and now the CAQ having to deal with the outcome and with the next steps as well, which I think they've completely fumbled. And Benoit Charette should not be in the environment portfolio. It's the last portfolio of, maybe apart from like Bernard Drainville taking it after his GRS comment. Neither of them should be in it, of course. And I can assure you that come 2 or 3 weeks after October 3rd, probably when they form government, they won't be in that portfolio. It's been, I think the CAQ has really fumbled that big time. Just to wrap up on Anglade, in terms of some of the stuff that I felt that was important to bring on, she was really going after Legault in terms of his tax cuts, but of course her part, the PLQ, wants to lower taxes too. She was trying to nuance, we're going to be prioritizing on the rich. We're going to be going after the les paradis fiscaux. And again, trying to really run on the track record of the PLQ being the party of the economy, and saying, we want to fight against this labor shortage. And how do we want to fight? Well, Mr. Legault says he wants to protect the French language by using immigration. Well, we want to protect our economy and fight our labor shortage with immigration. And that's going to mean 70,000 immigrants per year, taking that into Quebec. We need to regionalize immigration, and then bringing in this whole, this whole platform that she's really run on, and for the past, since she was came on as leader of the Quebec Liberals, is the Charter of the Regions, and really giving the regions of the administrative regions of Quebec their right to have their say at the table about what they want to, what are the priorities for them, allowing them to veto certain things, and really give lend their voice to Quebec City, and saying yes, no, we want this, we want that, this is what we want to prioritize. And she's saying we need to regionalize immigration so that each region can determine what they can afford to take in themselves. And I think also the big thing for her in terms of language, as the only party that voted against, the
PQ
voted against Bill 21. The only party the only major party, I would argue, that voted against Bill 96, in terms of having like more than 3 members in the assembly. She was getting a lot of questions on, you were in the streets with the English community. We're only 2% of North America here in Quebec. but how do you nuance your position as running to be the leader of a French jurisdiction, but also catering to the Anglophone community? And she was, I think she was pretty good in terms of
Yeah,
saying,
I think she did well. I think she did
yeah.
well on that as well.
She's not. She said the one line I'm just going to say. I will not tell young adults whether they're going to be
yeah.
that they're forced to go to English or French educational institutions. And I like that. It's like, I'm not going to baby you. You're not a ward of the state. I'm going to treat you like a human being, and I'm going to treat you with respect.
I think she did very well on that, and she did pretty well on the immigration front as well. Presenting that the charter of the regions and explaining how this new structure is going to have an important role going forward, which I think she presented and defended well. On Bill 96, I think she was solid, and that's pretty much her battle horse right now, because she realized that she cannot lose her base or any support from her
Can't
base,
afford
right,
to.
in Montreal.
It's all she has left.
Uh, at the same time, though, for people that have been following, like if someone tunes in now and listens to her, they're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. At least she's defending, this whole issue. But for people that have been following this from the very beginning, it's a little strange to see them coming out defending something that they completely botched throughout the entire mandate. They could have been much stronger, I think, during the last 4 years, and especially the last year with the whole amendment. It was a big mess, Bill 96, and the Liberals botched it. They came back. Now they're trying to play it as if no, we realized our mistake. We came back to the table, and we're the only ones that voted against it. The PQ voted against it too, but the PQ voted against it because they didn't think it was strict enough. They didn't think it was going far enough. So in all, I think she did well. But for the people that have been following, I'm not so sure how convincing she is to the
no, and we haven't seen much changes in the poll numbers. They've remained pretty steady for both the CAC and for the Liberals, where they are like circling a little bit under 40% for the Liberal they wish they had those numbers. 40% for the CAC, 18% for the Liberals. I mean, like, still Legault is still eyeing around 100 seats or a little bit under 100 seats. It's a massive majority that he's going to get, and if the numbers continue forward, and maybe the only change that we've seen in the past few days is maybe the PQ getting more than one seat, maybe the Conservatives getting more than one seat. It's not a massive change. It's really that would be huge for the PQ, given expectations being so low, and it would be huge for the Conservatives, seeing that their expectations were nothing.
Yeah. Well, the PQ is in big trouble, because people are expecting one seat. If you get two, you can't come out celebrating, because you still got much less than what you were left with than what you started with, right? I mean, they're at 7 now, 7 or 8 seats.
Well, having to kick people out of caucus for certain investigations that were going on.
Lebel left. I can't remember how many there are, but whatever. They're obviously less than 10. So anything under that is still a bad result. And I just feel like it's so embarrassing when if they come up with one, with 2, 3, which I doubt, but assume, hypothetically they get 3. If Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon comes out celebrating, I mean, that's just ridiculous, Are we done with Anglade?
I think we are, and let's move over to Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. He was representing Quebec Solidaire last night, and of course they've got the two porte-parole, the two spokesperson system. But if under their system for Quebec Solidaire, it would be GND, not Manon Massé, who would become premier of Quebec if Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois was to and the Quebec Solidaire were able to secure a majority of seats, a plurality of seats inside of the National Assembly. That is not likely, of course. Again, immigration and the number of immigration that they were trying to hit on was a big part of of his interview. Again, not debate, his interview last night. They want to hit somewhere between 60 and 80,000 for immigrants, which is big. It's a big number. That's contrary to the 50,000 that the CAC was proposing. And GND, what I liked is that he really did go after the little politics, that petit politique, with immigration, and I felt that he was able to really nuance and say there's a lot of prejudice when we talk about immigrants, and it's wrong that we do that. He promised to create a committee on immigration capacity for Quebec. Again, regionalized immigration, which I think was really taking from the approach that Anglade has taken in terms of regionalizing it, and we need to get more newcomers going into the regions, and to do better in regards to francisation, the learning of the French language in the workplace, and how that's really important from that perspective. He also promised to do this buyback program for housing. Given that the speculation of housing and speculators have really messed up the market over the course of the past few years, and that he would create this special fund administered by the Société d'Habitation du Québec, the SHQ, where they would be able to do a buyback program on that front. And I think he was they are always able to be the strongest when it comes to environment. Of course, their prospects of winning government are low, so it gives you more freedom in terms of what you can promise, what you can say, but they're authentic. And I think he was authentic last night when he was saying that, he wanted to make $29 billion investment in terms of fighting climate change, if necessary. And that he looked at this as the greatest challenge since the Quiet Revolution. And so I felt that to be very interesting. He was pushed a lot in terms of his his wish to restrict firearms from police officers.
Yeah, because they removed that from the program.
Yeah, exactly, and he's gotten a lot of blowback from members of Quebec Solidaire, and the flip flopping on this has not been boding well for him or for Manon Massé between the party members and their candidates. So it's been difficult from that sense there. But I think overall, good performance. He stuck to his key messaging. He came out looking really well. It was, for a lot of people, it was the first time that he was being introduced as the leader of Quebec Solidaire to, reintroduced to a certain extent, because people remember Nadeau-Dubois from 2012, from the student crisis. And I think that people really appreciated being able to see him again last night. Again, I adamantly disagree with him on so many things, but I think in terms of comms and messaging, he really did a great job last night.
I agree with you 100%. And there's two things that I think, for a rare time, if not the only time, they addressed during an election. One, his past as this revolutionary kid who was against for those who remember, he was the only student leader that did not want to condemn violence and the vandalisms. Remember, he just didn't want to.
Whereas you had Léo Bureau-Blouin, who was the head of the FEC, the CEGEPS, and then you had the head of the FEC, Martine Desjardins, who they did, and they both ended up running for the PQ. Only Leo ended up winning, and only for one term, I remind you.
And so that was the first time that they publicly just pinpointed and say, "Listen, this is who you were.
Who are you now?
Who are you now?" And he did a great job at just confronting it and saying, "Listen, I was 20 years old. I'm 32. Obviously, things have changed and I've matured," because this was all linked to his whole position on defunding the police and disarming the police as well. And he was very honest and said, "Listen, it wasn't our platform, but given the reality, we had to scrap it. We realized that it just doesn't work now, right?" So I like that about him. The other thing that we don't hear that often, especially during campaign, is the fact that Quebec Solidaire is a party that is in favor of separation of independence, and we never used to get that in other campaigns. It kind of flew below the radar.
Yeah,
this time around they questioned him, and he actually gave a timeline and how they, in the first mandate, they were going to separate, and first they were going to do une assemblée there, whatever they call it, to figure out exactly how it's going to be and what we need. And by the end of that first mandate, we would go to a referendum. I've never heard that before.
We're going to do an assembly to figure out what we're doing. What are we doing? We have no idea.
What was it in Assemblée Constitutionnelle? I can't remember what the term was, but
that was it. It was, and anyway, but I one thing that I think is important that he brought in was one thing that a lot of sovereignist leaders in the past, and again, this is because political leaders by and large, no matter if they're a federalist or sovereignist, overlooked them, was overlooking Indigenous peoples. And he talked about like a new nation-to-nation pact with Indigenous peoples. This would be core, and without it, we wouldn't be able to proceed. We would need something like that. And I like his perspective in terms of saying, Indigenous peoples are not this monolith. There are several different nations, several different communities, and they would need to be consulted, and there would need to be an agreement with them as well. If we were to go forward with this. But I think overall he did pretty well.
Yeah. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon from the PQ.
Yeah, I again, I don't like his style. I don't like the way that he comes off. I've got nothing against the guy. I've never met him in my life. I don't have any plans to meet him. But in any case, I felt that I just don't like his style. I think he comes off very academic, almost like a professor. And he, dressed up as a bank clerk. And I just don't. I'm not a fan. I think he's getting caught up in. He's had some good press the past few days. I'll give him this. Having Pauline Marois come onto the campaign trail, he's had some really good. He's had some really good campaign events where he was able to get quite a few people out to his events, and the crowds look great. They really look great on TV. But I feel that being pushed on the question of independence and the whole question of sovereignty, it really takes away from the ideas that the PQ could bring to the table. Having to refute the idea of it was like he was refuting the idea that this election was the last chance for the PQ. I think again, it really took away from him being able to speak about the platform. He said, c'est l'élection de l'espoir. For me, it sounded more, instead of hope, it sounded like, it's the election of desperation.
Yeah.
Because we're scrambling right now to stay alive. The PLQ is, by the way, too. Let's not be wrong and cast stones without taking that into consideration. But his role as leader of the PQ, I think, is definitely on the line as well. And I think that the leaving of sovereignists like Bernard Drinville, like Caroline Saint-Hilaire, who are now running for the CAQ, these were strong sovereignists. These were people that were part of the PQ, that were part of the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah.
And he's announcing these both those candidates as candidates that are
they're not staying true to they're not staying true to their values.
They are, and they're hiding what they really believe in, what they really think, and that's a heavy accusation, I think. But in terms of topics that I think that he was able to speak on and get his point across was in Bill 101 in Cegeps, the CAQ not going far enough in regards to French language, Bill 96 not being as strong enough, investing $3 billion into home care. Which is a really important topic post-COVID, and obviously was an important topic before COVID too. Doubling the amount of money that goes to collective transport, public transit, and again, one thing that I felt that he sort of deviated and was drawing a line in the sand was in regards to larger vehicles, which there's a tax that the Québec solidaire is proposing to put in place by 2027, is to put a heavy tax on heavy vehicles. And the PQ leader, PSPP, distanced himself completely from that, saying, no, we're not going to go that far. There might be some environmentalists in his party that are not going to be too happy with him this morning.
Yeah. The other point, where I don't know if it's gonna be an advantage for him or not during the campaign, is that he has distinguished himself and his party from the rest by claiming how irresponsible it is to cut taxes. So that's one of his main things. Like, we will not be cutting taxes. It is irresponsible. We need that money. If we don't want to be going back into the same cycle where we're going to head into austerity measures to correct these things from cutting taxes, right? And I find that very interesting. I just don't know if it's going to stick, and I don't know if it's going to be an advantage for him at all during the campaign. But I think it's important to mention he's the only one that is coming out and saying that every other party is completely irresponsible by wanting to cut taxes. It's not what we want to do. And I agree with you that the sad thing about his it's not his performance. He was okay. It's just that the whole interview took kind of a note as though they pitied him. It was like, so what are you gonna do? Okay, is this the end? There was this whole aura of, it's okay, don't worry about it. What are you gonna do? You're only gonna be one. Like, there was this whole kind of atmosphere that I felt was kind of directed towards the fact that the PQ is gonna be dismantled completely.
George, I've never been a fan of televised funerals.
Yeah.
So, watching this live on air last night was pretty depressing and pretty sad from that
Yeah.
perspective. But at the same time, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got
Yeah.
to lead the TQ. They still exist. Will they exist post October 3rd? Maybe for a little while. Maybe not at all. Will they be completely consumed by the CAC, which they've done a very good job in terms of eating up their seats, recruiting a lot of their former members? We'll see.
Let's move on to the last one. Eric.
Aha. Mr. Duhaime.
I liked his performance. I honestly, Eric Duhaime is very solid. The thing that I think is going to come back as a boomerang, especially for the media I'm talking about, is that they all seem to be ganging up on him. They are swallowing every spin that all his opposition is throwing out there against him. The media is just grabbing that right away and just spitting it right out to Eric Duhaime. What are you going to do with this? Like everything you see the parties bringing out against Eric Duhaime, the media is grabbing it and they're confronting him about it. I think it was on Thursday or Friday on the radio show, Paul Arcand, he destroyed him. I don't know if you heard that interview, comparing him to Trump and like just destroying him. And I think they're doing themselves a disservice of giving him so much attention. If they're going to paint him as the Trump of Quebec, thinking that it's going to affect the result negatively for him, I have a feeling they're going to be surprised because it may have the opposite effect.
Yeah, Patrick Lagacé had a really good article, a really good column that he put out in La Presse just a few days ago, going down that same route as well. And I feel that it has become, and Eric, I feel that had he done better candidate recruitment, had he brought in better players to come and build a real conservative party, I think the problem is not him. I don't think he's the problem. I think he's actually, this is the first time that a openly gay person has led a real conservative party in Canada. He's a social progressive. If you think about it, he is somebody who I feel is an excellent commentator. He's an excellent communicator. He knows how to tap into the hearts and minds of Quebecers because he did that for decades on air. He's worked as a political consultant. He's worked as a political attaché in the National Assembly, in Ottawa as well. He knows exactly what he's doing in terms of his messaging. His fault is that I feel that the PCQ is a victim of his own success in terms of recruiting too many people too quickly, and a lot of them were bad apples, a lot. And that's what's going to hurt him in the long run. It's again, a lot of what the media is going after is some of it is really what he's saying, but most of it is what his candidates have said, or what what Eric said years ago, and they're trying to pin him to that today.
But you don't see that. You don't see that kind of stuff as present as we would have imagined, right? We thought, oh, look at the candidates. They're going to trip him during this campaign. But it doesn't seem to be sticking. The media is so focused on Eric Duhaime so much that all these little things that may be coming up with his candidates and things that they said or they did or whatever, it's not sticking. It's not derouting his campaign one bit. At least not so far.
Yeah. And I think, but just like on last night, I think his performance was pretty solid. I think it sucked that he was the last one to go up because, again, nobody was watching towards 9:30, 9:45, nobody. And so I think unless they were like hardcore PCQ supporters, so he's already got them in the bag, so that didn't help much. But I think they were right to hit him regarding tax cuts. It's 25 billion over 4 years. It's more than any other party at this point. And again, they had the liberty of being able to say that because, of course, their prospect of actually getting into government and doing a tax cut of that nature is impossible. But there, and again, he was being hit by Patrice Roy a lot on having not released the financial framework for his costing of the actual plan itself. He's saying that he's going to be releasing that in the next few days. But at the same time, there was a little bit of back and forth in terms of trying to pinpoint, where are your numbers? You showed up to this interview. This is going to be one of the largest opportunity for you to speak to Quebecers at large. Millions of people are going to be watching this interview, and you didn't bring the books with you. This isn't good.
Yeah.
I think that he really had to defend that, but then also defend himself against the conspiracy vote, being the conspiracy candidate. And I think that it was interesting that he was saying, like, we don't have a monopoly when it comes to conspiracy whack job supporters.
Every party has a percentage, because they mentioned,
Exactly. And it's funny, it's funny how he named the Quebec Liberal Party. He named the Parti Québécois. I don't think he named the CAQ.
yeah, he did. I think he said like 15% of the CAC, unless that was the PLQ. I can't remember.
I can't remember, but my point being is that he's trying to really distinct himself. And again, he doesn't speak a lot about the Quebec Liberals. He doesn't speak a lot about the PQ, but he really tries to differentiate himself and make Legault the enemy, because Legault is l'homme de la situation. I'm going to go after him for what he did during COVID. I'm going to go after him for the measures he put in place. I'm going to go after him for the deaths in the long-term care homes, the CHSLD. I'm going to go after him for all these things we did for sanitary measures. I'm going to go after him for the mental health, what he accuses Legault of, the mental health problems that kids are going to have because of closing schools, because of them having to go online. I'm going to go after him for all of this. My supporters love it. And I've tapped into a base that feels completely disenfranchised by the other political parties, and I know I can take advantage of it. The question is, will what he was dishing up last night bring more support to him, or was it just currying to his base? Will it bring more support than, let's say, Maxime Bernier got at the elections last time around with the PPC? Or does it look just good in terms of the crowd numbers he's able to pull out? But he has hardcore supporters. The question is, does that translate into votes? I think the answer is no. My gut tells me, my gut barometer says it's not going to happen for him.
Yeah. Just to go back to his skill as a communicator, you're right. His main reason for being there is because of everything happening from COVID, because of everyone's, his supporters' frustration of the situation, and he defends it very well. I found him very strong when it came to answering the journalists when they were telling him about, but look at the facts. I mean, the Quebec did well and this and that, and he has every single counter argument. When Patrice Roy was talking to him about, well, we followed the science, and he's like, well, okay, well, where's the science about the curfew? I'm still waiting for the government to tell us, how the curfews scientifically prove that it was going to help the situation. Like, he had all these arguments already prepared. I found him solid. Now back to what you're saying about that support translating in votes. I don't know. I think it's still very early. I have a feeling that he's being very underestimated. And because of his talents as a communicator, when the next debates happen, when they're all together, something tells me that he's probably going to shine much more than the other leaders of the parties in those debates. Like, if I were running in this campaign as a leader, I'd be careful about Duhem much more than anyone else. And I think that's where he's probably going to outshine the other leaders in those debates. I'm really looking forward to seeing those debates, to see how he's going to perform. Well, I think I know how he's going to perform. He's very solid.
I think he's going to be great.
Yeah. Now, how is that going to translate? I think it's gonna show after those debates.
Yeah. George, let's do a sort of a preview of what the leaders are doing today on this Labor Day Monday, and then also our wag of the finger, tip of the hat. Sound good?
Let's go.
Okay, so it's day 9 of the election campaign. We saw all of the leaders last night at the Radio-Can debates. Dominique Anglade is going to be going to Trois-Rivières today. She'll be holding a news conference and will be visiting the area for the whole day. She's also slated to participate in a 5S7 with les militants, with activists from the PLQ. CAQ leader François Legault will be in Gatineau, as I mentioned previously, for a press conference. He's going to be also visiting the riding of Chapleau to visit a library. Interesting backdrop for any political leader, of course. PQ leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon will address the issue of immigration on a news conference in Lévis this morning. He'll then be heading to Rimouski, and later on tonight he'll be taking part in a rally in Matane-Matapédia, which might be the only riding left for the PQ come October 3rd. It's a riding that's currently held by Emmanuel Pascal Bérubé. As for the Québec Solidaire, the GND is going to be doing an announcement in Longueuil. for his party's policy on housing that he teased last night. So he sort of let the cat out of the bag. But again, he was speaking to over 1 million Quebecers, so it sort of made sense to scoop himself in this perspective. And then he'll be heading over to the Outaouais region later on. And then Quebec Conservative Party leader Éric Duhaime will be holding a news conference early in the afternoon in Quebec City concerning tax credits for gyms. He plans to spend the whole day in the Quebec City region. Interesting that Duhaime is going to be going doing this tax credit for gyms because, of course, gyms were one of the most hardest hit during lockdowns. And again, very controversial in Quebec City. Some gyms that continue to operate illegally once restrictions were imposed on gyms and other big venues or medium-sized venues across Quebec during the pandemic. So he definitely knows where to tap into his base, and he knows what they're looking for.
Exactly. Wag of the finger at tip of the hat.
My wag of the finger is going to go out to Mr. Legault. I believe that he last night didn't look at he stuck to his message, but he wasn't. He was a little bit too calm. He was a little bit too collected. And when he did look lively, and he did look like he was trying to make a point, I think he did it at the wrong times, especially going after Montreal and making this big, every time that he wanted to make a big distinction between a certain region, let's say Lévis and Quebec. He said people in Montreal will not be deciding the decisions for Quebec and Lévis, shaming Montrealers, really putting them down. And I felt that it's not a good look. Again, he knows where he's going to be getting votes, but I remind him too that he has some pretty high profile candidates running in and around the greater Montreal region. Yeah. He is looking to pick up seats on the island of Montreal. I think there are better ways that his team can be making a distinction between Montreal and the rest of Quebec. I don't think it's going to be done by shaming Montreal and really going after them. And again, his comment that he made to Patrice Roy last night in regards to Mr. Legault, people make accusations of you being arrogant. Is that true? Instead of him going, franchement, ben voyons donc, I think he really could have been more calm, more collected and said, again, the pandemic has changed a lot of things for people. It's changed me as a leader. It's changed Quebecers. And I need to learn. It could have been a learning moment for him and for him to say, you know what, I need a come to Jesus moment. I need to do better. I know that sometimes I can come off a little bit rough. I'm working on it. And I hope people understand that I'm working on it. Right. And I think that would have been better. In terms of a tip of a hat, again, Duhaime, solid performance. I think that if he continues this type of messaging in terms of communicating with the rest of Quebec, he might get those 3, 4, 5 seats that he's looking to get. He's still a long way off from even getting one if you look at the polls. But I think the debates do change everything. And I think that this could be a turning point for him if he's able to keep the momentum from the interview last night, keep it going to the 22nd of September for the next debate. I think there's something there. There's something in the water that might do him well.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've been saying from the beginning that I feel like he's underestimated from what I'm seeing and from what I'm hearing. Wag of the finger, I'll agree with you with Legault, even though he was a little solid on from all the leaders, and it's normal. I mean, he's the premier, so obviously he's all the attacks are directed to him. He's the one that has to defend his track record for the last 4 years and inspire the electorate for the 4 years that are coming, right? So it's always a difficult position for the premier in debates, but I'll agree with you there. Tip of the hat for me, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. I think from all of them, he came out measured. His communications were on point. He was calm. He knew his things. He knew his answers. Despite his young age, he showed a lot of maturity. And again, I can never agree with this party. Anything they say, anything that comes out of their mouths. But yesterday, I got to give it to him. I think he was superior from all the other ones.
And I think too, the one thing that I find interesting too, just on a last comment on this front before we wrap up is as we have a lot of Anglophones by virtue of us being Anglophones tuning in to the podcast, I think that I've always been interested by some of the Anglo supporters and some of the people that are natural federalists, that are naturally proud to be Canadian. Supporting Quebec Solidaire. And I think he really drew a line in the sand last night by saying, here's my path going forward for a sovereign Quebec. this is what my plan would be. You're either with me or you're not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Anglo candidates, because he does have a few Anglophone candidates that are running with him this time around, I think they're going to start questioning whether or not are they in the right party? Is the party right for them?
Yeah.
Do they need to reflect in terms of their political choices and their party affiliation? I've always been interested by that sort of weird the niche, that membership niche of those Anglos within the party, or people that support Quebec.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, like I said, every other election, at least from what I've noticed, they've purposely kind of flown below the radar when it came to the issue of independence. This is the first time that they come out swinging with it. So I agree with you. I'm interested to see those dynamics as well. Michael, thank you. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to be back on Thursday for everyone watching or listening. Head on over to all the platforms, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's anything in particular that you want us to discuss. No problem with that. We're open to that. Have a good day, Michael. I'll see you on Thursday.
Take it easy, George.
Ciao.